Welcome to Extremely Valid Points.
We're three business owners and friends who enjoy talking about business, marketing, and creativity.
Along the way, we just might happen to make some extremely valid points.
So we'd love it if you would join us in today's conversation.
Hey, welcome to the show. We're your co-hosts. I'm Nathan Sala.
I'm Dave Wilkins.
I'm Jenny Sala. Thanks for joining us today.
And today the topic is starting something new in uncertain times. So we're glad you're here with us. It's going to be a great show. It's a new year. We have lots of new things happening. It's a new decade. There's a new president, maybe.
Probably.
So, yeah, what a year. It's right now as we're filming this and recording this podcast, it's the end of 2020. And 2020, as everybody knows, has been a year for the record books. So we thought, since we're starting something new, and it is an uncertain time, why not let that be one of our first topics that we talk about? So here we go.
It's a great time to start something, right? As the first of the year. That's always sort of a time where we take stock of what happened over the last year and, maybe jump into something new. But this year it does seem like it's different, even though it is something like a start of a new year and a new time. Everything still is uncertain. We're not really sure what to expect.
I guess a good question to ask is, Jenny, how do you know if you should start something new?
So I think this is a great topic because one thing I think all of us feel during uncertainty is there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of fear. There's so much unknown. There's so many things we can't predict the future. We can't see what things are going to be like a month from now, let alone a year from now. And so taking a step and starting something new, say a business, a podcast, how do we know whether or not it's going to work out? And how do we know whether or not people are going to want what we have to offer, whether or not we can be successful? And so it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think that anytime you start something new, there's a big risk, and you don't really know if it's going to be successful or not, right? So that's a fear just in sort of normal times, right? But now there's even a bigger question mark because so much has changed, so much is unknown, right? We don't know, are we going to be in lockdown? Are we not going to be in lockdown, right? So that's a big question mark and makes things even more challenging for sure.
I think, Dave, that's a really great point you made, that anytime you start anything new, there's a lot of risk involved. There's always a chance that you could fail. There's always a chance that maybe your idea won't take off. No matter what the situation is, there's a risk of failure.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because I know a lot of our audience are, creative business owners. And so you have to kind of work through this fear. Both of you mentioned risk. Talk a little bit about how do you work through starting something new when there's risks involved and when you have to deal with fear, particularly your own fear.
When you're starting something new, you just don't know what the future is going to hold. And I think you can be excited. So that can be a motivating factor, just the fact that you're not really sure what's going to happen. Just kind of depending on your nature. Sometimes that's a charge, and that can be exciting, but also can be something that could potentially hold you back, right? But I think that the thing is that we never really know what's going to be down the road. Sometimes we think we know, like things are going really well, but then we're still going to need to pivot, even if you're in an industry that is doing well now. There's no guarantee that it's going to stay that way, right? And so one of the things we've talked about in the past is like looking at something like Netflix, right? They saw down the road that things were changing, and that certainly they came in and they sort of disrupted the field with mail-in DVD watching, right? But then if they would have stuck to that plan, they would have folded, right? And that they were able to look down the road just a little ways and see that there was a streaming thing coming down the road, and adjust their marketing plan and their whole business model to accommodate that and to kind of push that forward, right?
It comes down to, looking ahead, looking to see kind of what's happening and but we don't always know what's going to happen. So it's a matter of sometimes it's just a matter of just being lucky. For Netflix, if they were to face a time of electromagnetic pulse, warfare or something, EMP, where nobody could watch or stream anything, everybody would be like, Blockbuster is genius. They are the ones who made the right choice. So there's that element too, where we don't always know. And history kind of tells us who was making the smart choice, but there's a lot of factors that we can't really see. So if you're a risk averse type of person, your personality, that factors into it. I think a lot of business owners are sort of like adventurers, they're sort of, this entrepreneurial spirit where they're taking risks, but they're not really, some people might think they're crazy or stupid risks or, maybe reckless, but, a lot of entrepreneurs will take educated risks and they'll calculate the risk. Calculated risk, educated guess, calculated risk. Okay, got that. But I always think of the teams that were going into uncharted territory, and they still were successful. So, for example, when you think of the South Pole expeditions, where these teams of explorers were just trying to, it was basically the last place on the surface of the Earth that people were trying to get to, the South Pole. And one of the teams made it. They were the first ones there. Then they made it back successfully. The other team, they didn't make it back. They all died in the journey. And when you look back at their journals after they were later discovered, you can see how things kind of went wrong. And so when you compare both of those things, like one of the things that went wrong for the team that didn't make it back is they hit some of the worst weather in 15 years. It was the lowest temperatures that it had been in 15 years. And so they simply weren't prepared for it. But, you think about some of the things that the winning team did is they had, teams of sled dogs, which were prepared for any type of weather, and they could go hundreds of miles in a day. So you just kind of compare differences of how different organizations or groups or teams will operate. And based on that preparedness, the team who is most prepared seems to be the luckiest, and they seem to be able to handle no matter what comes your way. Because, when you're planning, you should be kind of focused on what are the contingencies. You got to kind of strategize and think what's going to happen and, look down the road. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? There are some things that you have no idea what's happening and you can't really know. But if you're prepared for as many contingencies as possible, then you stand a better chance of weathering the storms.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, preparedness is huge, right? So if you're prepared, when you're prepared, you're going to be able to pivot much better because you probably had some foresight, like the guys that you're mentioning there with the expeditions. Obviously, I'm sure they didn't know all the challenges that were going to be there, but they were trying to anticipate as many as possible and give themselves the best chance for what they didn't know, right?
Right. I think too, on this topic of, being prepared, planning ahead, thinking about what those risks might be. I think it's also really smart to kind of have an exit strategy. Obviously when we start something new, we want it to be successful. And that's our hope and our dream is that it's going to take off and it's going to make a difference in the world. But being in reality and hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst, knowing there's a possibility that I could fail and kind of already being okay with that, I think is a really smart and wise way to start something new. So being prepared that it could fail and then having an exit strategy, maybe kind of creating a line in the sand for yourself where you could say, all right, if this happens and this happens, if I get, if I spend this much money and it doesn't take off, that's when I'm going to stop. Or having some kind of plan in place where you have already accepted the risks and know what's at stake and what you're willing to risk so that you can learn from your mistakes and have a place where you can move on and it won't completely break you if you try something and it fails.
I'm thinking about just entrepreneurs that maybe they were all set and geared to start up something that maybe the pandemic has really thrown a huge wrench in their gears. Like, maybe if you're a restaurateur and you're interested in starting that up, and maybe you were just ready to go, and then you're forced to shut down. I'm sure our hearts really just go out to anyone in those kinds of situations. So starting something new might feel like this is a terrible time to do that. However, on the bright side of things, maybe you can see that everybody is in that same boat now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're going to have to compete against people in very established businesses. Like you said, Jenny, the playing field has kind of been leveled to some degree. So maybe you're trying to start that restaurant, but you didn't have, the primo location or something like that. So maybe this is going to work in your advantage. So I think trying to look for those ways where you can compete with the established players, looking for ways that you can provide something that's unique. Where are you going to, look at where your passion lies? What is it that was driving you to start that new thing? And see how you can use that driving force and that passion that you just couldn't help but want to start something new, and then just adapt to the circumstances, yes. Right? Which is obviously a lot harder than just saying it, but I think that everybody's kind of having to figure out how to do that, right? Take what we love to do, what we're passionate about doing, and adapt it to the market. I think and I think the thing is that some industries it's going to be easier than others to do, but I do think that probably in those more difficult areas you do have a little bit more level playing field. Another thing we talked about is looking for collaborators, right? Mm-hmm. Take what you do and look for someone that already maybe has a system in place for how to deliver your products, your goods, your services, and how can you team up with somebody where you can maybe make an advantage where you wouldn't have really thought about that alliance in a different time.
Wow. That's a good point.
It's a great idea.
Extremely valid point.
So if you're a restaurateur, you can partner up with DoorDash or one of these other delivery services. That would be one way you could collaborate. What are some other?
So if I owned a restaurant, I'd probably be thinking food truck, because the restaurants are getting slapped with all these restrictions. Food truck has virtually, if you have a permit to operate that truck, you're basically good. You're already outdoors. You can, I think you're poised to thrive. So maybe in light of your point, to collaborate. If you're a restaurant, you can just call up a food truck and say, hey, we have, thousands of dollars worth of premium, meat and food ingredients here. It's all going to go bad because we're shut down. So why don't we work together and save this food?
Yeah, that's a great thought there.
Yeah. So it's a good point.
What about people that are in the creative industry, like we are, in marketing and have their own creative agencies and businesses? What do you think they can do to weather this storm?
So a lot of people assume that people in the digital marketing space and the video space, since everything in the world is overnight gone digital marketing and video-based everything, you would think that our storm is weathered, but it's not necessarily the case.
Just
because
sit back and rake in that cash.
The company that was really prepared for this was Zoom. They were the company that they saw this coming and they were ready for it.
Did they see this coming?
It allowed people who were no longer allowed to get together to connect face to face, which was huge. I don't know. What would you say to Dave's question?
Well, I would say you would think that a digital industry could really just rake in the cash right now. However, because there's so much uncertainty, and uncertainty is scary, most companies are cutting back on their marketing dollars. They're trying to stay open. So one of the first things that you cut when you are, trying to decide between paying employees or, suddenly marketing can seem kind of like an excessive,
like a luxury. Yeah.
Yes, a luxury. I think many companies had marketing strategies in place before COVID hit, and suddenly they seemed a little bit irrelevant. And kind of off tune to the times, and you don't ever want to be irrelevant. When you're trying to connect with people, that's will just leave a bad taste in their mouth and say, oh, they don't get me. And so anything you had in the works, it's like suddenly you need to pivot, you need to change. If you're going to market, you need to talk about what's going on right now and how are you relevant to that? How are you solving problems for people? What is your company doing that is making the world better right now in a world that is really suffering and hurting? And so I think from a marketing standpoint, as people who are creatives, we have companies that work with us. One of the things that we did right away when COVID hit was we sat down and we said, first of all, we're trying to assess what kind of damage we're going to incur, right? Okay, let's look at our clients. What industries are they in? Are they going to be hurt? How can we help them? And really trying to think ahead and plan ahead on their behalf before they even call us. We want to, before they call us and say, hey, we need to turn the marketing dollars off, we already are coming up with plans for how we can help them pivot. And here's what we can do right now to continue to be relevant and to reach people. And in some situations, that was a really difficult move to make. We had a client who had a retail space and has really been resisting going online with their store, but it became very important at this point. If they still wanted local people to come in and buy from them while stores were shut down, then they needed to be able to get it online. And so we made a very quick pivot with them to get their marketing material, their items that they had for sale online. That's one way.
Yeah. I think really there's three ways to help your company or to help your clients, when they're going through this. And I think the number one would be, ask yourself, what are the opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
Can I sell my stuff online? Can I pivot in a way that can fill people's needs and solve people's problems in a way that is conducive to social distancing and wearing a mask and that type of thing? So just really taking inventory of what the opportunities are and how to solve problems.
Yeah. What are people's pain points?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how can you solve those for them?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, because right now online traffic is surging because people are stuck at home. They're on their devices. They're not going out.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see that there's increased social media traffic, and plus, just with the election, all the things that are going on right now, people are very tuned in to online. So you want that online presence. If you've been delaying or you're neglecting it in any way because business was going well, you've thought, well, I don't really need it, or I don't need to invest in that. This is absolutely the time to jump into that. And I think companies that do have that marketing budget are going to need things that have pivoted their message and adjusted that and tuned it to the current situation. And for those companies that haven't, that don't maybe, they really are having to scale back everything. I think we can try to look for what parts of our services can we productize? What can we deliver to that person that is a little bit more DIY and has to kind of handle all their social media marketing? Can we provide them templates? Can we provide them guides and workflows that work for them that are, kind of allow them to take some of that process in their hand? And how can we be a guide to them to help them through those things that maybe they can't afford someone to do every aspect of it, but they can look to somebody that already has something laid out for them and prepared so that they can just add their message into something that's already great and ready to go.
Yeah, I think it's a great time for content generation, especially if your business is slowed down and things are kind of scaled back a little bit. You've got a lot of time to write blog posts. You've got a lot of time to really strategize and really, slow things down, pull things back, and just take a hard look about who you are and maybe do some branding and really kind of focus on who am I? Who is our company? How do I want to steer things? How do I want to be known, in this post-COVID world going forward? When I rise from the ashes, what is that going to look like? How am I going to be different? How am I going to be the same? asking those questions for yourself personally and for your company and for your organization and for your team, I think is an invaluable way to look at what the opportunities are. And then generate that content, make some videos. You can hire a professional like Dave at ellipsispro.co. Is that the right URL? Or just get your iPhone out and do a video yourself, It won't be as good as what Dave can do, but at least you're generating content and you are, moving things forward.
Right.
Yeah. And you also need to get your e-commerce site up. You need to get your website polished and out there for the world to see, because people are online. So you definitely need to check out World Light Media and have them get your web presence out there. Get that SEO rolling.
Yes. We have discount SEO on sale, 5-pack.
So another practical step that you can take right now is really make sure you know and understand your audience. Who is it that really needs your product? Who is it that has the resources to buy it? Where can you find them? Where are they hanging out? How do you talk to them at their level? These are all invaluable things to know, because understanding your target audience is the foundation of what all of your branding and all of your messaging should be. And so your target audience could change as things are changing in a COVID world, and as you're starting something new. I've witnessed sometimes people start out with a specific target audience, and then once they get in there, they find out there's this other niche that really ends up liking their product for some unexpected reason, and that's always fun.
Your message has to ring true. And to your point that you said earlier about you have to pivot your messaging and in a time like this, because if you're running a commercial talking about, your party planning event, company or something like that, or your restaurant, where all of your photography, all of your messaging shows people in close proximity, society was sort of stunned all at once. And it came to the point where if we even saw pictures of people too close together, people were shocked. Like, oh, you can't, there's nobody, nobody can do that. They're not 6 feet apart. There's sort of this reaction. And so if you're a company and that's your message to people, you're still showing your same old message. Well, you appear to be tone deaf and you appear to be kind of out of touch, which hurts your brand. Yes. So you do have to find ways to get that message out to your target audience.
And by the way, we all happen to be quarantining together.
Oh, yes, true.
Since
the
you
camera
mentioned
makes it look like we're not 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
But
through the magic of television, we are, Jenny's in New York, Dave's in Florida, and I am here in Fresno, California.
Right.
Lies. All lies.
No, as business partners and very close family friends, we've made this commitment that while we are social distancing and we quarantine, I don't know how you say that.
A quarantine.
We're quarantine.
Nice. Quarantine.
A bubble. We're in the bubble. Our own bubble. Yeah.
So one common mistake that a lot of us make when we are marketing ourselves is we talk about ourselves a lot. And we tell everybody why we're great because we think that that's what they want to know when they're making a decision to buy something or not. Like, why should I buy from you? So we tell them, oh, well, we've been in business for so many years and we do this right and we do that right. And we're so good at this. And we kind of brag about ourselves. And I think the reality is that people really don't care about us. What they care about is themselves. And so to reach people and to connect with them in a way that they care, we need to understand them. We need to understand what their problems are. We need to know what problems we solve for them and why they should care, not about us, about the product or service that we're offering and how it's going to fix a problem for them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, now is a time where, emotions are high and, there's people are at home and they're looking to still buy products and services. Maybe they don't have as much expendable cash, but if you can put yourself in your core audience's shoes, basically, and figure out what is their need at this point. Maybe you kind of had a handle on what their buying habits were, or their what basically was kind of triggered them to help make that purchase in the past. But what can you now adapt your messaging to where they're at this point right now? So I think that's a great point. Just really figuring out putting it in from their perspective and what they're needing and wanting right now, and how can you serve them in this particular time.
Yeah, that's really good. And that's the third practical step is how can you add value? How can you serve? How can you make somebody's experience in this time, in an uncertain time, how can you give somebody that much more stability, that much more hope, that much more something solid that they can count on when everything else in the world seems to be untrustworthy, unreliable? How can you be that voice of reason, this voice of peace, like, somebody finally who's not going to let me down or be unpredictable. This is somebody I can trust. And really that's all your messaging is really all about. Anytime you're communicating with your customers, you're just basically saying, trust me, trust me, trust me.
All right. So, let's take these practical steps, Nathan, and let's apply them to a real world example.
Good idea.
Let's pretend I'm a gym owner.
Okay.
People are no longer allowed to come to my gyms where, they breathe a lot and they get really sweaty and touch everything. And so I'm shut down, but I still have to pay my rent. I still have to pay all the lease equipment or the leases for all my equipment and everything that I own or don't own. I still have to pay for some of my employees, probably. Most of them have probably been laid off. But at this point, with zero income, how am I even going to pay my rent and how am I going to stay afloat?
Well, first you change your name to We're the Gym Where Nobody Breathes and Sweats and Touches Everything. Get that messaging down. That's step one. All right, just kidding. So yeah, I would say that, the first thing, if I owned a gym or if you owned a gym, I would tell you, if you came to me, hey, how can I fix my marketing in this time? I would say, Jenny, call Dave, because at this point, you can't really train people in a personal trainer capacity one-on-one, face-to-face. But what you can do is maybe create some new content, like get a video together of here's some exercises you can do at home to stay in shape. All you need is a floor in your hallway to do these things. And I'm going to give you a new video every day for the next 6 weeks, and you can buy my course. And so basically you're transitioning to an online course model where maybe your subscription isn't based on people coming into your facility, but it's based on people checking into your content. Now, the downside of that is it takes an enormous amount of creative strategy and planning to pull that off, but it doesn't really need to be as complex as some people make it out to be. Really, you're just going to make a quick curriculum, pivot a little bit to what you might already do, and think of, use your expertise to add value to people, knowing that they don't have the equipment at home, and they really, what they do have is time, and, they probably have a little bit of space to work with. Think of ways that you can put together a curriculum for them to create this product that, like you said earlier, you got to productize your services. And now you have something that you can sell to 30,000 people all at once.
Yeah. And I think that's really good. And I think the thing is, you might think to yourself, well, I'm not ready to do this, or I can't do this at the level or the quality that I'm used to doing things. That could hold you back, right? And talking about starting something new, I think this is a time where you have to just go for it and realize that, hey, it's not going to be exactly like I want it to be. It's not going to be perfectly polished. But this is a time where I think people are willing to get on board with things that maybe aren't that polished, that feel kind of like, hey, I'm willing to support this person in doing things a little bit differently and a little bit out there on a limb, right? And you can, the important thing is really just to get out there and try it and get something going. because you can then adjust and make changes based on, people will give you feedback, listen to that feedback. But I mean, people are eating outside in tents, right? Where that never would have, it would have been too hot and too cold and whatever, but they're willing to do it now. They're going to go on this journey with you.
Mhm.
And so the important thing is just to get out there and try something new.
That's good.
It's good. So as a business owner, as a gym owner, following our practical steps here, asking ourselves what the opportunities are. So you said the opportunity is, well, now we can take this online. Now we can create this course. And the opportunity here is, like you said, instead of just having to work with such a small audience, now we can work with anyone across the world, right? If we're going to do that, who is our target audience? What is their pain points? Why should they care?
So your target audience are the people who need to stay fit. So you just say, okay, my audience is, there are still people who are very, borderline obsessed with staying healthy and fit no matter what. It's just part of their core. It's their identity. That's who they are. So those people are not going to go away. They could allow themselves to get defeated, and just give in and just stay at home and eat potato chips on the couch all day. But, you want to, they're looking for somebody to come in and save them, really, to solve their problem. So, you just adjust your messaging and say, you just say, hey, we can still help you. Put down that soda, put down those potato chips, and go to my website or download my app.
Yeah. So, pain point is, I'm stuck in the house. I can't go anywhere. I'm getting stir crazy. I've been sitting on the couch for hours. I've been bored out of my mind, so I'm eating. So, and then there's this whole other group. There's this group of people who are always going to be craving working out and the adrenaline of working out. But then there's this other whole set of potential target audience, which are people who have gained 15 to 20 pounds during the lockdown and are now going, I need to lose weight. And so, I mean, one whole way to spin this would be, I'm going to take you on a 6-week weight loss journey. You're going to lose 15 to 30 pounds in the next 6 weeks. And then let's do it together, because everybody is also really probably feeling a little lonely and this need to connect, right? So let's create this cohort, and we're going to have this group, and we're going to compete against each other, or maybe we're not going to compete. Maybe we're going to encourage each other and do it together. I think that's another potential target audience, would be not just the really hyper fit person, but also the, oh man, I need to do something quick because I'm in bad shape.
Yeah. You just clue people in that the lockdown will end someday, and you're going to have to face people.
And you better have clothes that you can fit into.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So how are we adding value?
The way you add value is by telling them the benefits that they're going to experience. So by the time this 6 weeks course is over, you could be potentially richer if you have like prize money or something like that. Whoever wins the challenge. You're going to be fitter. You're going to be healthier. You could talk about the science, where there's a lot of studies that prove that exercise boosts your immune system. So in a global pandemic, you can really add value to people by saying you're going to be healthier. You're going to be more. You're going to be your job of surviving this pandemic is going to be easier for you because of going through this process.
It's really interesting to hear what you're saying too about not getting stuck in the mindset, even though the challenges are very real, especially for someone like a gym owner. They also have a whole clientele that is really needing something. They need their services, right? And so how can I then take that to them? And obviously there's a lot of solutions that might take some doing to put into place, but it's achievable, and we see that people are doing it, right? We see, and again, just setting that bar a little bit low, and you just keep, you figure out how can I adapt this one phase, and then how can I go further.
So we've been talking mostly about adapting something that is already in motion, like your existing business. But going back to the title of the show, how do you start something new in uncertain times? And for us, what we were really trying to do was start this new podcast, because we had never done this before. We had never even participated in helping a podcast. At least I haven't. So we were just kind of thinking, well, how do you start a podcast? What do you talk about? And this was something for us, that this was content that we could generate. This was something that we've always wanted to do. So, so we thought, well, this is a great first topic, and let's just go for it.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of times starting something new, it could be something completely, outside of what you've done before, but it might just be another element to something. So, I mean, we do kind of feel like the podcast is a natural outgrowth, but it's something we have never really tried or attempted on our own.
I've heard us say, go for it, take a risk. In a pandemic, if you fail, the sting isn't as great, because, you can always blame it on the pandemic. So just go for it. Also, take that risk and be prepared. And like, you were saying earlier, Jenny, have a line where, it's an exit strategy. Like, okay, I'm going to do this, but if I lose all of my money, I'm going to stop. Or if I lose $5,000, determine ahead of time, like how much you're really willing to commit, and balance that with how big of the dream it really is. Because if you're going for something that that you were put on this earth to do, I would say, set the bar high and set your exit high, and just go for it with everything you've got.
So whether you're starting something new or just pivoting what you've already been doing, these steps are really going to help you no matter what. So ask yourself, what are the opportunities? Know your target audience and add value.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, you can send them to questions at Extremely Valid Points. But before we wrap up, does anybody have anything that inspired them this week?
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast, How I Built This, which is a great one. I can highly recommend that. I know you guys listen to it as well. But they had the owner of Powell's Books on, and talking to her about how she's adjusting, because a bookstore is obviously something that, was deeply impacted. They had to shut down for a period of time, and now they're on a limited basis. And they do have an online presence, which was about 20% of their sales, but now it's a majority of their sales. Wow. But I think in what we were kind of talking about, she mentioned that some people have like a gold standard for how they do everything, and some people maybe have a bronze standard. And she said, we have a duct tape standard. So I think the spirit, talking about it, the spirit of an independent bookstore and somebody that they're used to being scrappy and getting things done and turning things around quickly. So it's not to say that you can't do things well and do things with a high, bar of excellence. That is something to shoot for, and to go, try to hold yourself to a high standard. However, if that cripples you from doing anything and getting anything done, then that's actually hurting you. So I think, you have to be able to look at the mentality, because I think, you can provide an excellent service in ways that you feel like maybe this isn't exactly how I want to present it, or it's not where I'm going for totally. So just be willing to put some duct tape on things, especially in times right now.
That's so good. That's so true. I know I can't tell you how many projects I haven't finished because I wanted them to be perfect. And instead of just getting it out there before the world and allowing it to be a little bit messy at first and then ironing it out later, I don't want to launch it. I don't want it to bring it out and show the world this project until I feel like it's flawless. And that is debilitating at times, because we're never going to arrive at that place where we're perfect, or the thing is perfect, especially if it's going to grow and evolve and change as, when your audience gets a hold of it, and you're not, you have to listen to them. You have to see what it is that they like about it and what they use and what they don't. And so that's really good.
Yeah, and I feel like, I feel like the world is changing and having a breakthrough, or maybe it's not the whole world, maybe it's just this community that, we're a part of, or, that we're involved with. But I feel like there's this resurgence of authenticity and a shedding away of trying to fake it like everything has to be perfect. And it's allowing people to be vulnerable. It's allowing people to, say, hey, I suck at this, but this is the best I can do. And if it's not good enough for you, well, that's kind of your problem. But it's a freedom to do what you're going to do and maybe make something great. And, there's, what I feel like it does is it removes sort of that stigma of the fear of failure that I think has crippled so many people that have wanted to start something new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me, not once, but twice today, I was on a Zoom call with a client and we had this conversation, like, how informal these business calls are now. It used to be that if you were to have a Zoom call with somebody and then, your doorbell rings and your dog starts barking and your kid starts crying, and then somebody walks by in their underwear, like that would kind of be like a death to your career. It'd be like, it would be horrible and embarrassing. And now we all just kind of laugh at each other and say, oh, that was me yesterday.
Right.
Like there's just this grace and understanding that this is where we're at in the world right now. And it's okay.
Yeah. We're all in a huge global experiment and and people are giving each other grace, I think, which is good.
We could all use more of that anyway.
Yes. That's good. Well, I have an extremely inspirational point.
Let's hear it.
So actually, I was doing a little bit of research on the South Pole, trying to spruce up my facts for the podcast. But I came across a quote that Roald Amundsen had said, and he was the Norwegian explorer who was the first person to make it to the South Pole, and he made it back safely. But he said, you don't wait until you're in an unexpected storm to discover that you need more strength and endurance. And so I think that really, especially in light of the other team was in that unexpected storm with 15-year, record low temperatures. And at that moment, he probably discovered, I need more endurance to make it through. I need more strength. You don't wait until you're in that situation to discover that you need more strength and endurance. So I thought that was really speaks to the preparedness point that we were making earlier about, expecting the unexpected, but you can never have too much strength and endurance. And so I think, another quote that he said was, victory waits him who has everything in order. Luck, people call it. Defeat is certain for him who has neglected to take the necessary precautions in time. This is called bad luck. So I think so many people kind of attribute success to luck or bad luck. And he's saying the more prepared you are, the luckier you are. And I've heard people say that too, like, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
I think, if you work hard at preparing yourself for what you're endeavoring to do, and plus all of the contingencies that could happen down the road, you're just going to be one lucky person.
That's a great, extremely valid point.
So I just think that quote is kind of ironic because I think you could say that we're in a bit of a storm right now. The world is in a bit of a storm. And I think none of us really could have planned ahead or expected what we're facing right now and been prepared for it. And so I think we're discovering right now how much strength we have. But also during these times of adversity, I think these are really great opportunities for us to build that endurance and build that strength and enlarge our capacity for adversity. That also leads us to be more successful later on and gives us that strength that we need and the foresight that we need to carry on and build something new, start something new, and to be able to handle all the risks involved and all the storms that come with them.
Totally.
So there you go, guys. There is a word of encouragement in the middle of COVID. Just know it's going to make you stronger. And if you have made it all the way to the end of this podcast, thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you, and we're so grateful for you taking your precious time and spending it with us. Thanks for spending time with us at the Extremely Valid Points podcast. To learn more about this episode, see our show notes at extremelyvalidpoints.com. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you download your podcasts. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/extremelyvalid. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram at EVP_podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time with some extremely valid points.